The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's session, Energy and Sustainability Senior DoD Panel, hosted by the Energy and Sustainability Community of Interest. I'm Tamel Harbison from the SAME National Office, and I will be in the background assisting with any technical issues you may experience. Just a few housekeeping rules. You are in a listen-only mode, and we just also ask that you mute your phones. Any written questions for the speakers today, we ask that you submit those via the questions section and not in the chat section. We do have a poll today, and when it appears on your screen, we ask that you make your selection and you will be able to see the results afterwards. Already ready for download, the PDH certificate for today and today's presentation is available in the handout section. And today's webinar will be recorded. I would now like to give it to Michelle.
Perfect. Thank you, Tamel, and welcome to everybody. My name is Michelle Seipik-Zeros. Have the privilege and the honor of chairing the Energy and Sustainability Community of Interest for the next 2 years. And really excited to have this esteemed panel to provide their knowledge and insight to us today. As mentioned in the email announcement, this is typically a panel that we offer during JETC. COVID had different plans for all of us this year. So we're really excited to be able to offer this virtually to you. So next slide. Wanted to take an opportunity just real quick to share some energy and sustainability COI information. So your leadership team is in front of you, and I want to thank everybody for their volunteer and their support. Our recent update is that we did finalize our charter for the year. We also have our work plan, and we're working on a couple upcoming webinars for September and October. So Norm, thank you in advance for getting that set up. If there's anything that you would like to see from your team, please let us know. I know Mark and Lindsay are in the process of updating our webpage, but all of our contact information will be there in the very near future. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Norm.
Thanks, Michelle, and welcome everybody to our presentation today. We're going to start it off with a poll. So we'd like to know what the audience looks like so that we can have a good discussion. So if you go to the poll section and just select the most applicable choice, that would be awesome. Oh. All right. Okay. Tamel, do I have control again?
One second, I'm just trying to get this poll underway, but
right on.
you now have control.
Okay, great. All right, if we can get our presentation back. Awesome. All right, so thank you for everyone for participating in that poll. I'm your moderator today. I'm a Air Force veteran, and I work in the microgrid world. And my fun fact is I enjoy playing something called speed golf. I'm a little slower now than I used to be, but it's still fun to combine both of my passions together. I'd like to be able to introduce our next speaker, and this is Mr. Mark Correll. As a member of the Senior Executive Service, is the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Environmental Safety and Infrastructure, Headquarters, U.S. Air Force, Arlington, Virginia. He provides executive leadership on all matters pertaining to formulation, review, and execution of plans, policies, programs, and budgets for the Air Force built and natural infrastructure, environmental installation, energy, safety, and occupational health programs. These include facility management, military construction, utilities privatization, energy security, contingency energy, environmental compliance, and restoration, occupational safety, and workplace health. Mr. Correll, I'll turn it over to you now.
Super. Well, thank you very much. I think I'm supposed to have a fun fact. I think last time I did this, I talked about grandkids. So this time I'll talk about rugby. So my fun fact, unlike speed golf, is I spent about 20 years playing rugby. I still love rugby. I'm too old to play it anymore because I can't stand the injuries, but it was fun for me to do while I was involved in that. Let me go ahead and get started. I'll tell you up front, I'm not going to put any slides on the screen other than, unfortunately, it looks like you get to look at a picture of me the whole time. But at any rate, I'm not going to put up slides on the screen. I'm going to talk to you about the things that are going on from an Air Force energy perspective. Let me start off by saying thanks to Sammy. I appreciate the opportunity. They always thank us for coming and talking on these panels, but at the end of the day, this is a great forum for us to talk to our industry partners as well as others and let them know where we're going, what we're doing, and maybe more importantly, when we get to the Q&A piece of this, is to hear from you. What are the things that are on your mind? What are the concerns you have? So we understand where industry is at this point in time with energy as well. So I look forward to that piece, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today. Let me start off. When we talk energy, there are a couple different things from a taxonomy standpoint. I want to make sure that you see the lens that we're coming through. So first and foremost, when I say energy, and in this context today, I'm talking about energy security, and that includes both electricity and water, and I'll talk a little bit more about both of those in just a minute. But even broader, even bigger, to go to a more strategic level, our energy considerations, both from an electric assurance standpoint, mission assurance through energy assurance, and from a water security standpoint, are part of a bigger discussion. And that bigger discussion is what we call installation resilience. And from an installation resilience standpoint, there are 4 key pieces of that from an Air Force perspective. The first of those, not necessarily in priority order, but the first of those is this discussion we're going to have today about energy assurance, both from electricity and from a water standpoint, to assure that our missions can proceed. But there are 3 other critical pieces to this that aren't necessarily all in my portfolio, although we see it. The second of those is cybersecurity. And so Air Force A4C, the Air Force Civil Engineer, leads that discussion, but we're involved in where do we go with regard to control system security. And so control system cybersecurity is a key piece of our installation resilience aspect that's worthy of discussion in a different forum. The third piece of this is infrastructure. And so from an installation resilience standpoint, the infrastructure piece of this, probably the easiest example is to discuss like a Tyndall Air Force Base, where we're rebuilding Tyndall post-hurricane. What are the changes to the UFC? What are the different criteria we're going to have to build into our infrastructure to avoid damage from hurricanes, to avoid rising sea levels, to address increased aspects associated with earthquakes or any other things that come into play? What are the infrastructure pieces of that? And then the fourth piece of that is the people piece, the response aspect. So that goes to our emergency managers and our first responders, and how are we trained and what are we trained for, and how well do we exercise a response to any of a myriad of impacts to our installation that threaten our ability to accomplish the mission. So I say all that at the beginning to make sure everybody gets the piece that what we're discussing today is one part of installation resilience, and then internal to the energy discussion, there are 2 parts. The first of those is electricity, but the second is water. I'll talk to you next about what I'm calling the full picture of how we address things, and this is irrespective of whether it's water or electricity. So this is not going to be something that's particularly cosmic to you, but essentially it's a plan, execute and assess, and then correct. And so what do I mean by that? So what I'll talk about in the planning aspect, how are we moving forward first, and I'll focus this on electricity first, and then we'll get to the water aspect. From a planning standpoint, our focus is on the installation energy plans. So over the last few years, and I'm not going to go back in time and talk to you about everything we've done in the past, but we've built the installation energy plans. Internal to those for the Air Force, we've built metrics that are built around our 5 R's of resilience, which we can talk about later for those who haven't heard it. And we've put metrics and scores into that so that by mission at each installation, we can determine what are within the 5 R's, the gaps and the strengths associated with electrical resilience at that installation for a specific mission. Where are we in that right now? So from a planning standpoint, we did the first 7 last year. We've got another 16 or 17 that we'll complete this year. Ultimately, we will move to where 75 bases will be done by contract. The rest will do theirs on their own. But there's a next step that has to happen from that installation energy plan, which is now you've got to execute from it. So the plan is intended to show us where the gaps are, and then we currently have ongoing efforts with modeling and simulation at a base to figure out how do we then turn that into projects, and how do those projects affect those gaps from a metric standpoint to get us to a better position. So our goal with the plan is identify those gaps and identify then the projects that are necessary to fill those gaps on our 5 R's, go execute those projects, then come back and assess, okay, we thought this project would give us additional robustness, redundancy, whatever it is. How'd that really work out? Feed that back in and readjust the plan based on what? Based on exercises. So that's the second key focus area that we have beyond our installation energy plans and electricity, is the energy resilience exercises that I think we're now going to start call black start exercises. We've been colloquially calling them pull the plug exercises. The Air Force did 2 of those last year at Vandenberg and at boy, I forgot where the other one was now, but we did, Hanscom. So we did Hanscom and Vandenberg last year, got a lot of lessons learned out of that. This year we will do 3 more and determine what else we can learn, and then get specific at each location to say, here's where we thought the gaps were. We did an exercise now, we've pulled the plug. Is that where the gaps were, or are there gaps we don't know about? And then we revise the plan to fill those in as we move forward. We're simultaneously building a kind of a do-it-yourself help guide for our installations, because we're not going to be able to afford a $500,000 energy exercises run by contractors and others at every one of our locations. So many of our bases are asking to move forward. So that's kind of the big picture of how we're handling electricity. And you'll see we're not quite there on water, but we're going to get to the same point from a water standpoint as well. So in general, on the electric side, things have not changed. It's still mission assurance through energy assurance. It's still a focus on our third party and our direct investment on resilience first. Cost is a factor, but not the factor. And then finally, clean energy is important because it brings with it a level of supply chain security that some other aspects don't. So that's kind of where we are from an electric standpoint. Let me shift to water for a minute. So we've moved forward fairly significantly in the water category as well, but our water focus is the same. It's based on risk to mission. So we are looking at what are our water requirements for the mission. A little different than electricity, because certainly there's a water aspect for people that is required, but we're looking at things like missile launch, aircraft wash racks, depots that use water for industrial processes. What are the things that are necessary to make sure that we can actually accomplish the mission from a water standpoint? 3 aspects that we look at in the water area. Quality, I'm going to put aside, that's more in the environmental area, but quantity and access. So we are looking at extensively quantity and access. And how are we doing that? We've gone out to each of our bases and we've created what's called the Water Availability Scorecard. We also have something called the Water Dossier, which is an extensive sheet of information that covers what are the water assets that you have today? What are your water rights today? What are the things you can actually get to? What agreements do you have in place to determine what exactly it is that each installation has available to them from a water standpoint, and what do they have access to? The second piece of that obviously then is what's the requirement. So using the water needs assessment tool, we're going to each one of our installations to try to determine what's the real need, what's the baseline need. We've determined, for example, some of our installations have as much as well, we had several that were in the recent call by Congress that were over 30% of their water was used for irrigation and landscaping. Clearly, that's not mission essential. And so we'll look at what do we really think we need from a water standpoint. Now we're going to get some opportunity to do a little more in the water area. So you'll hear our Secretary and the Air Force talking about the America's Water Infrastructure Act. We have about 36 bases that will be impacted by that. We're required at each one of those bases to put together an infrastructure, a water resiliency plan that we'll submit back to Congress that indicates how we're going to handle water resiliency at each one of those locations. But I think we're going to do those resilience risk assessments and do it kind of informed by the way we've been moving already with regard to our water needs assessment and our water requirements, and then look at, much like we did in electricity, what's the plan, where are the gaps, how do we fill them, and then feed that loop back again. Let me finish my piece of the discussion and talk to you a little bit about some of the things you've asked in the past about initiatives that are ongoing in the Air Force. So what we call reserve, which is execution of the 10 USC 2912 authority. So we've moved forward on that. I think last time I spoke to you, we looked like we had about 15 million coming in. We got that 15 million set aside. I've already issued the half that goes to the installations. To those installations so they can use the money as they see fit for energy projects. And then the rest of it is being retained at the headquarters level for us to take action with. This year it's probably going to mostly go to help pay for our energy resilience exercises, but we'll be harvesting that every year. And so it looks like that's a program that's going to become less of a new topic and more of a foundational topic. Folks regularly ask me about energy as a service. We're making some progress in that area, more at Altus, where we've actually completed the baseline study and have just received the initial responses back from the co-op and from the vendors that we're working with to see how that might work at Altus. We've been attempting to use another transactional authority at Hanscom. We ran into some difficulties in that, but we now have an organization that's willing to work with us on another transactional authority. Then the next thing is we've run into a little bit of challenges finding funds. So I'd hope to award by the end of this year on energy as a service at Hanscom. That may not be possible unless we find some money at the last second. More likely we'll push it into the next fiscal year and try to award that way. So let me stop there because I know that at least the Navy and hopefully Mr. Surash was able to join so the Army can give you their perspective as well. Again, thanks for listening to me today. One of the inputs I'd like at the end of this though is, do you prefer seeing a couple of slides up there or do you prefer hearing us just kind of talk through this with you? So let me know what works best for you because this time I chose not to use slides, but I'll stop there and I'll turn it back over to Norm. Thanks.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Correll. Appreciate the words and the information. Very helpful on where the Air Force is headed. Now I'd like to introduce Matt Haupt. He's our next speaker. We'll be talking about the U.S. Navy and the Marine Corps' efforts and his role as the Energy Division Director for the Naval Facilities Engineering Command, NAVFAC. Mr. Haupt oversees the planning, coordination, and integration of Department of the Navy energy policy and strategy to achieve assured energy and energy-related cyber controls at the Department of the Navy installations. And with that, Mr. Haupt, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Correll, for that outstanding summary of what the Air Force does. The Navy also is following basically the same parameters, making sure that mission assurance is forefront in the minds of anything that we do with the energy. As you know, when we come down to it, without energy, we are dead in the water. The Navy can't fly planes, we can't drive ships, we can't put subs underwater without energy. So therefore, with that thought process, excuse me, you know, we do live in pretty much unprecedented times. The common enabler to get through these times is energy. And as Mr. Correll did indicate, energy and water go hand in hand for making sure that the bases are able to ensure that they are able to perform their mission. So with that being said, future warfighters will need exponentially more energy, when they go forward fighting battles and protecting our country. Quick capabilities to recharge, adapt, and adjust to future conflicts. To address those energy security missions, we actually also have what we call the installation energy plans. Those installation energy plans are really the forefront and foundation of everything that we do to determine where our energy security gaps are, how to close them, how to mitigate them. Much as Mr. Correll indicated, the Navy is on board with that philosophy. Out of the 74 naval installations across the world, and the 24 Marine Corps installations, we are anticipated to complete all of our installation energy plans by December 2020. That was a large step in determining what is needed at these installations to increase your mission assurance. Again, this is a fantastic form and a way to articulate and narrate our strategy, and also how to work with partners. SAME is obviously a large partner for both public and private collaboration, integration, and great ways to find a solution to long-lasting problems that we do have out there. Because right now we are in a global power competition. Russia, China, other actors out there, other bad actors, are giving us a little bit hate and discontent, which we also always have to address. But we're also confronted by natural disasters. COVID-19 obviously comes forefront in the mind, but just as the Air Force is working with Tyndall, the Navy has some pretty large lifts that we're looking at, from Hurricane Florence down to Camp Lejeune and China Lake earthquake. We are rebuilding 2 bases from the ground up. When we start on planning those bases, sustainability comes into forefront. Not only do we have enough water, do we have enough power, but are we building to account for those natural disasters that are coming up? Are we building in accordance with the earthquake standards? Are we taking into account hurricane additions and hurricane UFC requirements? So with all that being said, the answer is yes. Obviously, as we are rebuilding these bases, sustainability and energy go hand in hand for this unprecedented time that we have. So with that being said, next slide, please. Thank you. One of the talking points that we provided was, how do we in the Navy, how are we fast? How are we agile? How do we accomplish our missions out there? And really, the alternative delivering and partnering with industry is one of the areas that we pride ourselves, we being the Navy DON, Assistant Secretary of the Navy, Sandy Klein, CNIC, and the entire Department of the Navy infrastructure. We look at industry as our partner. How do we engage those architect engineering firms, the construction firms, to ensure that we are able to meet those mission assurance needs of protecting our country? If you look on the slide on the left-hand side, you'll see the authorities that we work under, and some of these are third-party financing. These are other ways that the Navy has leveraged our ability to work with industry to get a better performance product out there. And I'll just go through these really quickly. EULs, enhanced use leases. We do have a real estate authority given by, obviously, the Navy to engage in incorporate energy into the enhanced use leases. ESPCs, energy savings performance contracts. These are guaranteed energy that the contractor will take a facility, they will integrate or build a new, and I'm going to just make an example here, a new power generation facility. They'll run it, they'll maintain it, and they will guarantee performance out of that piece of energy equipment for the next 20 years. You have UESCs, which is a third-party financing type of construct that we do have for the utility system. The utility system will come in They'll bid on using and running our utility systems, and we obviously appreciate all the work that they do in maintaining that system. So we don't have to spend that capital fund to operate and maintain this equipment. We're doing it through these third-party financing systems, power purchasing agreements, USCs. The ERSIP program is obviously the energy side of the MILCON program, so we certainly rely heavily on those on that system of contracts that we are able to get out through the DoD. Utilities privatization obviously is a big area that the Navy is trying to step forward into, trying to ensure that we are using the money for the best possible uses to, again, assure that mission assurance. And then IGSAs, intergovernmental support agreements. So with that being said, I have a couple of slides, and I want to go over what, just a couple of these highlights. And the one that I want to really bring up is the Naval Station Guantanamo Bay. In July of 2019, NAVFAC awarded Siemens a $350 million ESPC. This was that energy savings performance contract that I was talking about, which is actually the Navy's largest ESPC to date. And this is enhancing the Gitmo's overall energy resiliency. It advances the base's critical mission of supporting interagency joint operations down in Gitmo. So the ESPC was 22 years within the contract. And after the 22 years, it actually will result with approximately $822 million performance contract. So what this ESPC is doing is actually providing a whole base solution for the energy resilience of the entire base. And this is being done by photovoltaics. This is a new power plant that working on LNG gas. We're working with DLA to ensure that LNG gas is supplied on a regular basis out there. There's energy storage systems and a facility level energy and water conservation measures. This is what Mr. Correll was also talking about with FRCS. We're actually including a lot of the FRCS control systems within Gitmo. So with this entire investment of 22 years, $828 million, $822 million program, it is the largest, and it really is a highlight of what we're doing within the energy program for the Navy. So with that being said, I will go to actually stay on this, but I'll I'm not going to talk about each one of these pictures, but I did want to bring up our brethren over in the Marine Corps with the MCAS Yuma, Arizona. This was an enhanced use lease. You see it in the middle of the right-hand side there. And basically, it was completed. And this one, it really highlights the advantages that we have with electrical microgrids. We actually put in a microgrid through this EUL, and it's got high speed switching capabilities. It's approximately 15 acres of unused land. This is how we're, again, alternate delivery and partnering with industry. We had a whole bunch of land out there. It wasn't being used for training or bombing or anything like that. So we actually provided this as an enhanced use lease. They brought in a whole bunch of power storage capabilities and a microgrid. And basically this is a highlight of how we can use microgrid to enhance the resiliency of an individual isolated installation. Because Yuma, if anybody's been out to Yuma, it's pretty much in the hinterlands, and it's not really easily accessible, not like Norfolk. So the microgrid that we used at Yuma is a highlight that we'd like to tout, saying, hey, we're jumping on the bandwagon. Navy DON has jumped on the microgrid bandwagon and showing how we can decrease consumption, increase the resiliency, increase the ability for mission assurance of that installation. And the final one that I'm going to talk about, just at least on this slide, is the bottom left, which is the Naval Support Activity Mid-South. as you can see, well, you may not be able to see on your screen there, but basically, we provided an EUL, again, an enhanced use lease, for a 53 megawatt PV solar array. As you can see in the picture, it's fairly large and extensive. Basically, 72 acres of DON, Department of the Navy land, was used to facilitate putting this in, and this has really been a large beneficial program for the Navy to show how we can produce power and industry, working with industry on looking at alternative ways to provide energy for mission sustainment, but also saving that critical dollar so that the warfighter continue his mission. If you can go to the next slide, please. You pass one, there you go. Really quickly, I did want to touch on FRCS and the ability for using data. As Mr. Correll also brought up, cybersecurity is critical importance to the Department of the Navy. We are facilitating, really utilizing a lot of the FRCS facility related control systems so that when we are able to automatically look into a building, find out where some energy savings may occur, the bad guys can't get in there. And we work within that CSP, the Cybersecurity Platform Enclave, to get an authority to operate. Now I'm throwing a whole bunch of acronyms at you, but basically we're using data as an asset. But we need to protect that data. Obviously OPSEC and everybody's very familiar with loose lips sink ships. So we're trying to make sure that not only can we use data and a public works function at the base level, at the ESH3, at the ESH2 levels, where we can identify where we're doing well on our energy and where we're not doing so well. Again, back to the installation energy plans that we provide, this is a tool to ensure that installation energy plan is updated, maintained, and actually used and utilized, and not just a summary that you put on the shelf and it gathers dust. So with that being said, we are trying to use, and we are currently using microgrid and FRCS systems, automatic and advanced metering, to facilitate bringing many of our installations, both the Navy and Marine Corps installations, into the cyber age, but while also being cyber safe, making sure that no bad guys can get into our system, but we can still use our SCADAs, we can still use our security systems, we can still use our HVAC systems without fear of a bad guy shutting us down and impacting our mission critical nature. Next slide, please. One of the final talking points that we had, what is the Navy really doing looking forward? What are we going forward with? And really, I'm going to show you two slides here. One is wastewater optimization for energy savings. As again, pointing back to Mr. Correll, water is part of energy. Water is part of our essential mission assurance metrics and criteria that we measure installations on. So we have actually gone into how to optimize wastewater. People think of water and they think of, as it was said, irrigation, but you have HVAC systems that use water. Many industrial processes use water. What is forgotten a lot of times is actually the wastewater component. And we are over at XWIC, which is an Expeditionary Warfare Center in Port Winnie, California. We are actually using a wastewater optimization, and as you can see, the bottom line up front on this slide is that we can estimate up to about $65,000 a year with a 20% energy savings at 3 of our selected sites. So we are taking water conservation very seriously with that. So this is one of the advanced ways that we're looking at enhancing our ability to use those limited dollars for mission assurance. Next slide, please. The last slide that I have for our presentation today is really a pride and joy of Exwick out in Port William, California. And this is a testing and microgrid implementation isolated test bed. So what we're doing out in California is we've developed actually a way to test your HVAC systems, your FRCS systems, your advanced metering, and we actually set it up within an artificial enclave, a mirror of what we see out in the facilities that are online, and we can test many of the products. And I'm not advocating the use of products, but you know, if we take a Johnson Controls versus a Trane Controls, just speaking off the top of my head, and we can compare them, we can test them, we can see whether it meets the ATO, the authority to operate a cyber secure mission side for FRCS. Again, my mission is to make sure that the boots on the ground, the deck plate level, can do their mission. If I make things so hard on the cyber secure side that they can't do their mission, I've failed. So this is actually a really interesting test bed where we are taking many types of cybersecurity, microgrid, and other implementations. We test it out before we ever implement it out at the installation level. This helps save headaches. This allows us to go into an installation already past the learning stage, already past that learning curve, so that you can jump on board and get an entire installation up and running very quickly. So with that being said, I wanted to mirror what was said before. You know, our mission at the Navy, at the DON level, is to be agile, to allow the lethality of the warfighter to continue. As I said, we are in a great power competition right now from national defense strategy from both state and non-state actors. So using the very limited resource dollars that we have for energy and sustainability resiliency, we're trying to find better ways to enhance, again, our mission assurance. With that being said, I turn the brief over to Mr. Jack Surash.
Great, thank you, Mr. Haupt. That was really good. Excellent. So far, we've heard some great comments from the Air Force and the Navy, and we expect nothing less from the Army. So let me introduce Mr. Jack Surash. He's been the Acting Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Army for Energy and Sustainability since September of 2016. In this position, he is responsible for overall program direction, establishment of policies, development and refinement of strategies, and oversight of implementation of all programs and initiatives related to energy and water resilience and sustainability within the Army. As the Army's senior energy executive, Mr. Surash coordinates and integrates both installation and operational energy programs and strategies. And with that, I'll turn the mic over to you, Mr. Surash.
Hey, Norm, thank you very much. Just want to double check that I'm coming through okay.
5 by 5.
Great. Hey, first of all, thanks to SAME. This is I really appreciate the opportunity to to get with you today. Sorry that we could not be in person, but this is kind of the next best thing. Okay, hey, so a fun fact. Yes, I am a fisherman. I've been chasing muskies, muskalounge, for about a dozen years. I normally go up to Canada. Unfortunately, this year was not able to go, but hopefully be able to get back next year. So I guess what I would tell you about muskie is, you're typically measuring muskie by number of inches. You kind of don't have a chance to weigh them, and a huge muskie would be 50 inches or larger. So my fun fact is, my largest muskie thus far, and I've maybe caught 15 or 20, is 45 inches. But the very interesting thing is that was the first muskie I ever caught in my life, and I think that was about 5 or 6 years ago. So anyways, hey, so great job by Mark and Matt, and I kind of like going last. A lot of times at these get-togethers, they'll have the Army go first. So I'm just going to try to build on what Mark and Matt spoke about. So I think if I can have the first slide, please. you know, in the Army, I actually had a title slide, but that's okay. We could stay right there. You know, the Army is big. You know, 140 some installations around the world, and they obviously support everything the Army does. So we've got industrial bases. We have you know, lots of training and housing and barracks and things like that. But you know, another key feature, a little bit different, obviously, than Navy and Air Force and Marines, is the requirement to mobilize and deploy, you know, from our installations, and that also would include, you know, in our case, the Army Reserves and the Army, you know, National Guard. And I think you know, there's an appreciation, a much better appreciation and understanding that the installations are connected to the fight. I think in Army lingo, a lot of people would talk about, oh, you know, it's an away fight. Well, you know, if we can't, you know, the Army's got some great, you know, brigade combat teams, BCTs. Well, our secretary's even publicly mentioned, hey, if we can't get those great BCTs out of Fort XYZ, then they're not going to do us a whole lot of good. So we are focused, squarely focused on energy and water. And if I had to bucket things, I would say resilience, efficiency, and affordability. That's kind of the things that we're chasing. Resilience, you know, I think efficiency and affordability has always been around this portfolio. Resilience is really the new, you know, the new thing. You know, the Chief of Chaplains has a resilience program. Obviously, ours is very different. So the resilience we're talking about is, you know, we're very concerned, you know, in my portfolio about energy and water considerations for facilities and infrastructure that directly support critical mission. So that is frankly not, that's a whole lot harder to than it sounds. I mean, at some of our large installations that might have 2,000 or 3,000, you know, facilities, you know, at the end of the day, starting off with, okay, what's your critical missions, and therefore what are the pieces of infrastructure and facilities, you know, that I need, and how long do I need to keep those in operations is, you know, is quite a task. So just like Mark and Matt spoke about, I mean, we're after installation energy and water plans. Quite frankly, we're on a 3-year you know, schedule. We had 18 or 19 completed in the first year, so those came in September, October of 2019. We've got a big lift this year that frankly we're going to be late on. We got a late start due to the budget, and then COVID and other things have kind of slowed down progress. But what these plans are all about are essentially identifying deficiencies to the, you know, the infrastructure and facilities that support critical mission. And what we're obviously trying to do then is rank those deficiencies, and don't think that all these deficiencies are going to be projects. So for instance, at an unnamed large Army fort, amongst their many deficiencies, their top ranked deficiency was that they needed to develop a refueling plan for their emergency generators. They had probably 250 emergency generators, and they did not have a plan that would be able to keep them refueled. So that's kind of an operational thing. No doubt they also had a bunch of other, you know, typical project sorts of things. With respect to Black Start exercises, we've been very aggressive on them. We've done exercises at Fort Stewart, Fort Greeley, and Fort Bragg. Fort Bragg was probably the most aggressive example. That was essentially a no-notice exercise. The garrison commander wanted to simulate essentially a cyber attack, typically in a cyber attack, unlike weather and other sorts of things, you're not going to have you know, any sort of advance notice. So on that last slide, I was just showing some of the the ways that I think you guys would be interested in you know, that we're trying to get stuff done. So we're fairly big, shown on the left, with respect to utilities privatization. We've about 1/2 of Army installations, garrisons are currently privatized. So I think what you're going to see is relative to the last 5 years, you're going to see a little bit of a slowdown, but it's mainly because if you take a look at the list, we've privatized most of the important installations that we have. So we're going to continue, but it's going to be at a you know, a slower pace. My favorite form of getting stuff done is using other people's money. The gold standard thus far in the Army is a project out on the island of Oahu at Schofield Barracks. And in fact, on the next page, I'm going to give you an example of the most recent project along these lines. And then, you know, third-party financing. We continue to be very interested in this. What I've got pictured there is one of the measures recently put in place out at Fort Carson was a relatively large battery. I think this is currently the largest. It's certainly the largest in the Army. I think it may be the largest across DoD. It's a 4 megawatt, 8.5 megawatt hour battery. And essentially what this is doing is grabbing electricity during low cost hours from the grid and then using it at very precise times to cut down the demand charge. So it saves about $500,000 a year, and so it will pay for itself over the course of about 20 years or so. Okay, let's go to the next page. So speaking of other people's money, this is our latest project example. We've probably got $700–800 million worth of projects. So this is out at Fort Sill. So using 2667 authority, enhanced use leasing, or leasing, if you want to call it that. So in June, we signed the lease with the Public Service Company of Oklahoma. They're a subsidy of American Electric Power, and this is a energy reliability and resilience project. The next step is the Public Services Company, is in the middle of filing with the Oklahoma Corporation Commission. That's the Public Utilities Commission out in Oklahoma, for regulatory review. So at the end of the day, assuming this is successful, and we think it will be, this will be a ratepayer based project. So during normal times, what it's going to do is it's a large natural gas operation and a smaller operation. It's going to provide electricity to the local grid out in Lawton, Oklahoma. And then similar to Hawaii, during a contingency or if the grid goes down, we are able to turn this plant inwards and provide electricity to support all the critical stuff at Fort Sill. So we continue to push these projects. We've got a whole office, the Office of Energy Initiatives, that's set up to prosecute this sort of work. All right, next. With respect to threats, climate and extreme weather is definitely an issue out there. So, we're no different than Air Force, Navy, Marines, that our installations are vulnerable to certain impacts. And so obviously we want to try to, with respect to resilience, we want to try to understand what the threat is and try to overcome those threats. And in fact, we've told our installations that we want them to attempt to account for extreme weather and climate change. I think OSD is actually telling us to do that in the installation energy and water plans. But this sort of analysis would also flow into other things: integrated natural resource management plans, the real property master plans and stuff like that. So we've actually we're piloting a tool right now in the Army that the United States Army Corps of Engineers developed, and we're calling it the Climate Assessment Tool. And essentially what it does is it identifies climate hazards, at all of our, right now it's just about all of our United States installations. We'll be expanding that to overseas. So in April, we launched this, we launched data that covers 73 installations. A couple months later, we were able to update it. We're up to now almost all U.S. installations, so about 116 installations or so. And so it provides data on coastal and riverine flooding, soil erosion, heat index, energy demand, historical hurricane and tornado, sorts of information and things like that. And it projects things out into the future. This is a very sophisticated tool. It's projecting out 30 and 65 years. So we think this is going to be a really great tool that will help help Army installations identify problematic areas and hopefully keep us from building where we currently don't have something, or understand what we've got to overcome based on the threats that are out there. All right, one last slide for you. So Section 2912 of the National Defense Authorization Act. Thank you to Mark Correll and the Air Force and his folks. So this is actually a very, I don't expect you to understand much of what's on this slide. I'm just going to talk off of it. But essentially, we have captured we have copied, and we're proud of the fact that we copied and we're able to copy the Air Force's procedures on this. And essentially, what we're in the midst of right now, it should be done next week, is we are capturing our first year's worth of savings. And this is approximately $40 million from FY15. And just like the statute says, it goes into an account that never expires, never is subject to reappropriation. Half of the funds go back to the exact installation that generated the savings, and the other half go into a central pot that we'll be able to use for, and we're going to focus it on obviously energy, water, resilience. Well, we'll have to see about water, and certainly we can spend that money on energy resilience. We'll have to see what we can do on water. But at the end of the day, this, for those folks interested in energy efficiency, this is going to be the world's greatest way of motivating energy efficiency out on the ground at bases and installations and garrisons, because the commander, the garrison commander, the CO will receive back 50 cents for every dollar of savings that they can generate. And statute lists, I've listed on the bottom right, the very general sorts of things that that those funds can go against. So this is going to be great. I can probably give up my harping about turning off the lights and doing this and doing that, because once our leadership out on the ground understands this, they will be doing all the right things, because again, they'll be able to get some of the savings back that they're able to generate. Hey, let me stop there. I really appreciate the opportunity. I want to leave some time for some back and forth and questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Suresh. And we're going to have a little session for Q&A. If folks would like, we could probably extend for about 5 or so minutes. But let me take a look in here and see what kind of questions we have coming in. And this is for all the panelists. First question, the elephant in the room. How will COVID-19 change your implementation plans moving forward?
Smart Correll, so I see me. I'll go ahead and go first if you want. So it has had some impact in terms of slowing us down in certain areas. So for example, we wanted to do an IEP at Aviano in Italy to do some overseas looks at what we were doing. We had to put that off because there's no travel to Europe right now, and find alternate ways to get the same kind of data, which is overseas data that we're looking for, but not be able to do it in an overseas location. From an IEP standpoint, internal to the United States, this is likely to slow us down as well, because we'll have to do a lot more virtual work than physical work in terms of figuring out where to go and how to make those happen. We're still doing, it hasn't impacted a number of our research and development or modeling and simulation kinds of activities, because we've hired different labs to do that, and we're able to continue to do that at those locations. So I think it's made it where we have to be physically engaged. We're having to find new ways to make that happen. And since I know we're not going to have a lot of time, I'm going to ask industry is, hey, I'm interested in hearing from you at some point how you're viewing this. So hopefully folks are realizing that there's not going to be a this is over, now we can go back to normal moment anytime, probably ever, but certainly no time soon. So how do you want to move forward in the future, given that we're going to have some form of COVID impact for the long haul? Let me stop there and turn it over to my counterparts.
Thank you, Mark. I guess I'll jump in next into the fray. The Navy has experienced some slowdowns, just as referenced with the IPSs and at the deck plate or installation level, where some of the contractors were not either able to get on board or they were prevented by their own companies from engaging in some of the activities. But the focus for the DON, Department of the Navy, which includes the Marine Corps, is obviously quality, speed, and agility. So we sit around and try to determine the optimized course of action to allow us to continue, again, that mission assurance. So I'm not really answering the question, except to say, it has impacted us, but we are, as normal warfighters, we're able to adapt and overcome those challenges. And we've seen a little bit of a decrease, but not significantly in the form of energy or resiliency. And I'll turn it over to Jack.
Oh, okay, so ditto on top of what Mark and Matt just said. Across the board, we're seeing. I'm seeing a slowdown in progress. So like Mark mentioned, love to hear what industry says and things you can do. Our installation energy and water planning efforts are going slower than planned. Project execution, large projects, energy resilience conservation investment program projects that the Corps of Engineers does for us. So we're seeing designs proceed slower because of travel sorts of issues, et cetera. I'll stop there.
Okay, great, thank you. Let's see, we had a couple of questions come in. One was actually a really good question in that the word resiliency was thrown into the mix a lot, but can you define that for some of our audience members? They may not be as familiar with how each branch literally defines resilience.
So Mark Correll here. So there is a formal DoD resilience definition in the DoD publications, but it's not really relevant in my mind, because essentially what it says is make sure that that you have the ability to recover from and continue the mission when bad things happen. And so that's interesting, but it isn't sufficient. So over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, we've been through a long evolution in the Air Force that started with our mission, mission threat analysis, determine what each piece of a particular mission is from a power standpoint to get it done, followed by the 5 R's of resilience, which are characteristics of resilience. I don't know that you can get to a single definition that's helpful, but the 5 R's give us the characteristics of resilience, followed by which we go to the IEPs and say, okay, now for each one of our missions, what are those 5 R pieces to that particular mission, and how does it stack up to their need for their requirement, and then get to okay, so now there's a gap, and how do we fill it? So I don't think it's super critical that we have a here's what resilience means, other than when there's a cyber physical or climate attack of some form on our system, that we're able to respond to it. Beyond that, you got to go a lot more, and that's what we've been trying to do through those 5 R's and the mission threat analysis and the IEPs. Over.
From the Navy side, I'll just jump in. The three main pillars of energy are resiliency, reliability, and efficiency. And again, is a direct definition of resiliency a critical matter? No, it's the ability to recover from anything, whether it be a cyber attack, a natural disaster, or war. Are we able to continue the mission as needed for the protection of the country. And really, that's from the DON side. Our installation resiliency strategy, which is a document put out by the ASN EINE. It's just one of the 3 pillars for good energy sustainment out there. And I'll turn it over to Jack.
All right. Hey, so what I think I would add is, along the lines of really caring about resilience, I got 2 thoughts. Within DoD, we've got to stop fairy dusting in exercises and even in war games, the energy sorts of considerations. Whether it's Indo-Pacific or a more local garrison sort of thing, we've got to stop assuming that the backup generators are going to work for X number of days, because in fact there's studies showing that we should not, even under the best of circumstances, they're not going to last that long. And the second thing I would say, coming out of some of our Black Start energy resilience exercises, we've got some really ugly real life examples, and I'll just give you one quick one. We had at a unnamed fort, we had a fairly critical building that had critical and non-critical circuits on the inside. So when obviously when the grid power was on, everything was lit up. Grid power was lost, the up system kicked in, the critical circuit stayed on. The up system only works for 10, 20 minutes. After that died, and the emergency generator system automatically kicked on and took control. Guess what? Some of these critical circuits were somehow not lit up by the emergency backup generator. So there's my real life example of, we got to stop assuming and fairy dusting. We could have sent in, I don't care how many electrical engineers and electricians, they would have never figured it out. You really got to test this stuff. Until you test it, you don't really know what the heck you have on the ground. Thank you.
Great, thank you for those answers. Here's one more that I think is pretty interesting, in that the services are moving towards more utility privatization here in the future. And the question was, what's the interaction with the privatized utility companies when assessing water and energy resilience?
So let me disabuse one notion first, which is, at least within the Air Force, we are not moving towards more utility privatization. We're moving towards targeted utility privatization. Specifically, we're looking at those utilities that are mission critical and in bad shape, and we can still pencil out a UP deal. So that's where our focus is, on utilities privatization. Now, going forward, though, we have to and as we do those, they're all based on resilience. So I'm building in the new ones, the resilience aspects of what we're trying to accomplish. And if there's no resilience aspect, we're not likely to use utilities privatization as the tool for how we'll handle our infrastructure. Interesting that what you bring up, though, is looking back. How do we handle the previous ones? So I'll just say up front, we're on board with the Army's direction with what they want to do with construction activities on that. But we'll have to engage through the utilities privatizations conferences we have with our owners to make sure that they understand they still have a responsibility to assure that they can provide the services that we've asked them to provide, given new dynamics. So when you sign a 50-year deal, the notion that it's going to stay the same forever is not valid for the Air Force. Hence, we're going to have this discussion on MILCON, but it's also not valid for the privatization owners. They know that over time they're going to have to make changes as well. So we'll have to work with them on that aspect for the ones we have already through those conferences and with the legislation that I think Jack will talk about. Over.
Yeah,
thanks.
Go ahead, Matt. Did you want to go?
Yes, sir. If I may, just mirroring what was said, utilities privatization. We're the Navy, the DON is not necessarily increasing our UPs, but we are doing again a targeted UP identification. Where do we have mission critical assets? Where do we have systems that are aged and or not maintained enough where a utility service is providing the service? And we are looking at that as, again, a targeted UP. However, we do articulate and we do communicate with that utility owner. Hey, here are the requirements. Here's mission critical TCA, DCA efforts that we need to make sure are never off. Or here are some critical aspects of a wharf that you cannot ever have any power off. We actually communicate very well with those utility providers to ensure that they understand black starts are a way of the future. You know, we do have a mission assurance mission that is required by DoD to meet, and if you sign into this UP, you will have to meet these too. So we try to communicate that as much as possible up front, and being honest, an honest broker with that utility service provider, so that they understand what they're getting into, and we get a better product at the end. Jack.
Okay, so with respect to UP and the Army, I like Mark and Matt's term targeted. So I'll reiterate what I said before. Relative to what you saw the last 5 or 10 years in the Army, it's going to be much slower, and it's because if you look at what we've done, we're almost, you know, half of our installations, garrisons, and frankly most of the important ones are privatized. So it'll be a similar look to exactly what Mark said. With respect to going forward. With respect to installation energy and water plans, I think that was part of the question. We certainly reach out to our system owners because we're looking for deficiencies that affect energy and water resilience. And in fact, in 1 or 2 cases, we've actually contracted with that utility to do the installation and energy and water plan at a couple of Army garrisons. Okay, the last point, I think what Mark was wanting me to mention is pending the National Defense Authorization Act, we should get the situation straightened out with respect to the ability to have URSA projects that are at places where the utilities are currently privatized compete for consideration. That's been a issue for several years. It's impacted the Army the most, so we cared the most about it. I know the Air Force and the Navy also cared, but it frankly was not affecting them as drastically as it was us. You know, if you consider 1/2 of our installations were kind of off the list, that obviously affected our ability to to generate projects that would be acceptable. Over.
Great. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. I know we've run over a few minutes, so I think we're going to wrap up the session. Really would appreciate everybody's attendance, questions, and the content was excellent. We look forward to being able to engage more, and I think speaking as one of the industry, we're looking for more ways to engage. So let us know how we can help in the most efficient and expedient way. I think, Tomel, I think do we have a, for attendees, you can download the slides over in the right-hand side with the handouts, and your PDH credits are available there as well. And if you do have any follow-on questions, feel free to reach out to us on the COI, Energy and Sustainability COI, and we can help collaborate through those. Michelle, did you want to add anything?
No, I just thank you everybody for your participation today, and thank you again to our panel. We really appreciate the support that you provide to SAME, and your insights are valuable, and we look forward to continuing the conversation with you. And with that, we will have our next webinar in September. We're looking to get that finalized, so look forward to an email within the coming weeks to get you details on the next webinar. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your day.